Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and discussion time. It is Monday, the 12th of July, 2021. And as the headline says there, the Eastern Pacific is going to be busy this week and probably into next week. The Atlantic Basin pretty much closed for business over the next several days. Suppressed phases of the MJO and Kelvin waves and all that kind of stuff. African dust, the Saharan air layer, and the fact that it's July. That all by itself should be enough to tell you that the Atlantic is not going to be busy for some time to come, and that's fine with all of us, I am sure, because August, September, and October, we are going to have our hands full. So nope, no tropical cyclone activity over the next 48 hours, and that is, of course, the case over the next 5 days. In the Eastern Pacific, though, as we alluded to there, that is a different story. A couple of areas of development looking likely here in the Eastern Pacific. The good news, though, excellent news, both of these will head away from the Mexican coastline over here. So you all down in southern Mexico, no worries from these systems. They may develop one of them into a hurricane, and that could send some swells out eventually up towards the coastline. We will monitor that because that wave energy in the ocean, creating those swells once they break on the beaches there, that could be problematic if you're not careful, but we'll watch that as that unfolds. In the satellite department here, looking at the western Atlantic, a couple of interesting features to note. First of all, our disturbances in the general area of development down here in the Eastern Pacific. Going to take a few more days, but it looks like we will have a couple of systems. I'll show you that in a moment on the GFS, and we'll take a look at that at the 850 millibar level. Very easy to point them out. Pretty much clear skies over the western half of the country. Very hot out here. You've been hearing all about the records that were set. There is a pretty active monsoon overall in the desert southwest, and that will come and go as the day wears on. You get the moisture increase. Well, at least the moisture bubbles up. It comes out of some of the mountains and the deeper forests down here of Mexico. Some of that moisture also advected in from the Gulf of Mexico, and then it gets over the desert southwest. You heat it up, and you get some thunderstorms. The problem is you can get some dry lightning, where you get lightning strikes, but not a lot of rainfall. A little bit of a storm system over Missouri today, kind of gloomy and just, it's not winter, so it's not cold, but this is keeping things rather unsettled there. A few thunderstorms over Texas. And then this is an upper level low spinning in the vicinity of Florida and the Bahamas, and that's bringing some very heavy rain and lots of lightning down to the peninsula of Florida. And the reason behind that is, it's really neat to see here, a little meteorological lesson for you. You've got cold air up there at about the 500 millibar level and up, and that's around 18 to 20,000 feet in the atmosphere, depending on how the atmosphere is behaving. And cold air over warm air gives you that instability. It allows the lift of the warm air to be more efficient, more buoyant, if you will. And so that cold air aloft helps to generate these thunderstorms, very prolific. And that's going to be kind of problematic down there if you're traveling along I-95. The Turnpike, you're in those major cities, makes for some great lightning shots at night, but not very fun to drive in. But nope, this is not tropical in nature. Nothing to worry about there. There's another upper level low here. Everything else, though, maybe a tropical wave moving through here. It looks like an easterly wave of energy, but right now we're in that suppressed phase of the Kelvin wave activity. The convectively coupled Kelvin wave leaves behind a tropical upper tropospheric trough a lot of times, just a fancy way of saying that the door is closed for development for now. And you can see that really easily on the vorticity signature. Here's our features in the Pacific that we will watch. But notice the Atlantic here, the main development region, nothing at all. Just a few blips of minor vorticity in through here. That's about it. Convection and organization is all squashed right now. And that's, again, typical for July. ELSO is an anomaly. We're not supposed to have hurricanes in early July for a reason. And I think it'll be quiet for at least the next 10 days and maybe longer. All right, so down in Florida, just wanted to show you real quick. There's the results of that upper level low spinning in the waters in and around Florida. Just some air mass thunderstorms all through here. This is more organized over Texas. and everything west of there is pretty much hot and dry, except for any monsoon activity in the desert southwest, which hopefully I will be going out to observe in person in August. Now, let's move along and take a look at something really interesting to me, and it should be to you. The Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI, I show this once in a while, especially in the off-season. This is a measurement of the pressure differences between Tahiti and Darwin, way out in the southwest tropical Pacific. And when these values are low, let's say below 0, and it's just an index, it's not measuring something like temperature or pressure or anything like that. I mean, it does measure pressure, but the index itself is just an index. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's not 17 of something. It's just an index, like the stock exchange, if that makes any sense. So when those values are low, that being said, especially below about 7, -7 and lower, the atmosphere behaves in such a way that you get more westerly winds coming across the tropical Pacific, or at least a slowing of the trades, which are normally from the east, and you start to develop El Nino characteristics if it persists over time, that negative SOI. Once it becomes positive, and especially persistently positive and strongly positive, you have more easterly winds blowing across, and maybe even stronger trade winds, those easterlies, than normal. And that helps to foster this La Nina, the abnormal cooling of the Pacific. And so what do we have? Well, over the last few months, April was practically neutral. May was a little bit on the positive side. June almost went negative. Now, all of a sudden, look at the 30-day. We're at +8. It has really jumped. I mean, a pretty big increase here in the SOI. We're even moving the needle gradually on the 90-day, which is now up to 3.85. And once that 90-day there gets above 5 to 7, then we really have established the pattern that can help foster a La Nina. And the contributor for today, the difference between Tahiti and Darwin down in Australia, gave us a number of 17. And you can see right there over in Tahiti today, 1016.45 Darwin. The pressures were lower, and Darwin, of course, is west of Tahiti, right? You should know this. And so the air pressure shows us that the wind blows from Darwin towards Tahiti. I'm sorry, the other way around, from Tahiti towards Darwin. Higher pressure to lower pressure. That's what I almost had it, and then I screwed it up. But that's the difference there. When this difference is substantial, you get more extreme numbers, so to speak. But look what has happened in recent days. It hasn't been negative for a long time here, relatively speaking. Let's scroll down and see the last negative number was back here on the 28th of June. Almost was, I mean, we got real close to 0 on the 5th of July. But it's really been, for the most part, positive after some negative values back in June. But this SOI is a clue as to what is coming. And you can see this reflected very nicely in the anomalies chart for today. Look, more negative anomalies are showing up across the Pacific now. Very interesting to see. I'm going to go back next Monday when we do this update and show you what it looked like, let's say, at the beginning of July. We'll compare some maps. We'll go back in the archives. So we're starting to develop the colder signal in the tropical Pacific. The Atlantic is interesting. It's a little bit warmer in the main development region, basically where it should be, to slightly cooler in the western Atlantic, quite a bit warmer up in the northwest Atlantic, and then you've got this Atlantic Nino, the abnormal warming of the equatorial Atlantic, a rarely talked about feature, but all in all, the upward motion over Africa, the Indian Ocean, etc., is going to be prevalent. We're going to have sinking motion and generally less activity in the Pacific, this cold look to the northeast Pacific. The Atlantic will get busy in August and September, and we may in fact eclipse 20 named storms. Several different agencies forecasting that. All right. Oh, let me point out one thing. Notice in the Gulf up here and all around the western Atlantic, cooler anomalies through here, just a few blues showing up. And you look at that, in blue you might think cold. And yes, it is on the negative side. It's a cold anomaly. But those blues up along the Gulf Coast translate to what? Look, these water temperatures in here, If we go down and look at the legend, easy to see. Still, even though they're colder than normal, we're still talking in the 28, 29, well, not quite 29. Sorry, the legend is a little stretched. We'll just call it 28.5 Celsius, so about 83 degrees Fahrenheit. So even though the water temperatures through here are a little cooler than average, we're still talking 82, 83, maybe 84 degrees Fahrenheit in reality, and that's plenty warm. The whole Gulf of Mexico, plenty warm to get hurricanes, and then you've got the loop current trying to nose its way up through here, and that will provide a moving current of warm water as well. So it's just interesting. You got anomalies, but what do those mean in real world numbers? In fact, right here up against the coast of North Carolina, I went to the beach yesterday evening with my kids, and the water was a nice 82 degrees. Quite lovely. All right. So the GFS, I'm not even going to show the Atlantic side because there's nothing brewing out there. So we'll look at the Pacific. Here's the Baja Peninsula, west coast of Mexico. We'll draw in the east side over here, just so you know your geography. And then let's watch this area right through here. And we just kind of move this out through time. One area of vorticity closes off on the left side of the oval that I have drawn in. And then another one pinches off there on the east side by about days 4 and 5. And so we might see a weaker system on the left side, the farther west system. And then that other one there on the east side gets wound up pretty strong. Could be a hurricane out there by a week's time, but as you can see, it moves on out into the Pacific. And here's a great clue. Why does it do that? Why is it heading out this way instead of curving up towards Mexico? Well, there's big high pressure sitting out over the Pacific, and that helps to drive those trade winds to the west. And this is kind of part of that. Another impulse there. Look how they're just lined up out there. Kind of neat to see, especially when they are not going to affect land. Let's just drag this out more, and you can see everything just moves on out into the open Pacific. Maybe this will end up towards Hawaii several days down the road as a weakening puff of moisture. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see about that. I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right, if you want to connect and follow, we are supported by awesome people on Patreon. That's our crowdfunding source, patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Then we're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I got a great team of people that help out keeping up with all of that stuff for me. And of course, on YouTube, that has grown substantially so far this summer. I appreciate that very much. Lots of new viewers daily and during the live field mission stuff that we did during ELSA. So welcome aboard. Good to have you. You can share the YouTube videos all you like, and hit that notification button, and let's keep growing this. More and more people can take advantage of what we're doing. It's awesome. Good to have you along. Without you, why would I need to be here, right? That's the way I look at it. I mean, I love what I do, but it makes it even more fun and more interesting and more fulfilling. That's the word, because I know that you're there appreciating it. All right? All right, so appreciate the rest of your week ahead. I'll be back tomorrow every day. We'll have something to talk about. And by the way, in fact, let me come on one more time. I was almost ready to exit, but not quite. In just a little while, after you watch this video, it'll probably be available. I'm going to make public a video that I produced. We put it on for our patrons first. It is one of these Hurricane U, like university, series episodes that I do. It's like a deep dive into a certain concept, kind of like having a guest lecturer. And this time it's Eric Webb. You know him from Twitter, Weber Weather, tweeting very interesting things about convectively coupled Kelvin waves, the MJO, all kinds of interesting stuff. We cite Eric often on our videos. And so I sat down with Eric over Zoom, him out in New Mexico, me here in the office in North Carolina, and we talked about this very complex concept of the Madden-Julian oscillation, but more so convectively coupled Kelvin waves. You're going to want to tune in. A very good production, very deep dive. You might have to watch it 3 or 4 times for you to understand it, but that's a good thing because it's a very complex subject, and Eric did a great job explaining it, and it's really neat. So that's Hurricane U with Eric Webb coming up. I'll make it public later this afternoon. And then tomorrow, I have another Hurricane U episode with Dr. Phil Klotzbach, and I will make that public as well. I'm going to put it on Patreon tonight for folks to watch there, and then make it publicly available tomorrow or maybe Wednesday. I just want to make sure our patrons see it first, and then we make it public. All right, now I can sign out. Have a great rest of your Monday. I'll be back, like I said, tomorrow. And don't forget, we also have the morning podcast, Hurricane Season, the podcast. Search for it wherever you look for your podcasts. Hurricane Season, the podcast. That's what it's called. It's on the homepage of HurricaneTrack.com. Easy to find there. All right, now I'm finished. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll be back with more for you tomorrow.